Everybody, welcome back to Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast brought to you on video by our good friends at BetUS. Don't forget to get that 150% sign-up bonus. That's right. All you got to do is use the promo code YouTube150. Get over there, bet these games. Of course, this is Thursday, We have the delayed Sugar Bowl due to the terrorist attack yesterday. And so you're going to have that tonight, as well as the Gator Bowl. And, of course, the NFL coming up this weekend with some interesting games, some other games where there's a lot of starters sitting. So, but do your betting at BetUS. And, again, use the promo code YouTube150. Get that 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 as they bring you our video. Make sure you also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review. Scott Gulbranson and my friend Mo Moten. Mo is, of course, national NFL writer at Bleacher Report. Also, the Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com, where I also work. You can catch Mo on x.com at Mo Moten, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully, and the show is SNB Today. Well, Raiders, they're going to close out the season at home against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers playing for playoff seeding. They're in the playoffs. Now they're playing for seeding. We heard, at least, unless he's playing some gamesmanship, we heard Jim Harbaugh say that they were going to play their starters because they want to get that number 5 seed in the playoffs on the AFC side. And so what does that mean for the Raiders and their opportunities to maybe extend their winning streak to 3 games to close out the season? Mo, that news that the Chargers, I think everyone suspected that would be the case because unlike some of the other teams who can't change their seedings, the Chargers can. And so there is some benefit to them playing their starters. Did that surprise you in any way?
No, Harbaugh talked about the importance of seeding. He also, I don't want to say walked back, but he didn't defiantly say that he would play the starters if this 5 seed was already locked up. So on Saturday, the Steelers are going to play the Bengals. If the Bengals win that game, the 5 seed is wide open for the Chargers because then, they can move up in seeding because they can finish with a better record than the Steelers. If the Steelers win that game, they have the tiebreaker over the Chargers, beating the Chargers head-to-head earlier this season. The Steelers would then lock up the 3 or the 5 seed, depending on what happens with the Ravens game. So if the Ravens lose and the Steelers win, Steelers become the 3 seed, Ravens become the 5 seed. If the Ravens win and the Steelers win, Ravens become the 3 seed, the Steelers become the 5 seed, and the Chargers are locked into the 6 seed because they already beat the Denver Broncos twice this season, swept them in the season series, so they can't drop below the 6 seed. They'd be locked in. He stopped short of saying if the seeding is locked up that he would play his starters. He said, I'm not saying that. But I would assume that we will see, based because just the way Harbaugh coaches his teams, I would assume that we're going to see at least some stars on the field. I don't know if we'll see Justin Herbert if the 5 seed is already locked in, if the Chargers are already the 6 seed. But I will say that if the Raiders go out there and they face the starters and they win another football game, we'll talk about this probably more during the calls, I think that bodes well for Antonio Pierce, though I know, Scott, you may disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I don't think if they beat the Chargers, I still don't think it's enough, right? So I get your point, and I don't disagree that it would make the decision, I don't know if I would say more difficult, but it would definitely give Antonio Pierce a little bit of oomph at the end of the season. You can't deny that because your team, I don't care who you beat, and yes, they beat 2 bad teams prior. Going into the Chargers, a good team. If they're playing their starters, the Chargers play their starters throughout, and the Raiders somehow win the game. It's a big win. It's a playoff-bound team. You got nothing, quote unquote, nothing to play for, right? As far as the Raiders in the postseason goes. So I agree with you there. I just don't think, again, where you brought that up, I just don't think that any of it is enough to move on for Antonio Pierce. But again, we don't make the decisions. Seemingly, Tom Brady is going to help Mark Davis, or Mark Davis is going to tell Tom Brady to make the decision. I don't know how it's going to go. We'll find out more. But certainly that conversation, the drama, and it's not heavy drama yet, of course, but you, of course, have Black Monday, which comes next Monday, which is where you typically see a lot of coaches fired. Now, it'll be interesting, not only the result of the game on Sunday, Mo, with the Raiders and the Chargers, but then as you get into Monday, I think that if the Raiders don't move on quickly, i.e. he's not part of the Black Monday or maybe even into Tuesday, if they don't relieve him of duties quickly, then I think the the chances that he returns increase. I mean, I think the more that time goes on, because, in the NFL, you can't waste time. You got to get your staff set. Everybody's got to get, now you might have somebody who's in the playoffs. And if they're in the playoffs, then of course you don't have to hurry to fire your coach. But at the same time, you also need to start to move forward. If it's not somebody that's in the playoffs already, i.e. an NFL coordinator, which I think would probably be the most likely, then we might see Antonio Pierce stick around for a week or two until this team is bounced out, whatever that team is. And if not, if it's done quickly, then boy, you're going to really know fast what the Raiders' idea of moving forward looks like.
Well, the Mike Vrabel link to the Raiders is already picking up steam. Peter Schrager already talked about it.
Yep.
On video, and he said basically what we talked about. His relationship, he has a very good relationship with Tom Brady. Played together, and they've remained in contact since they're playing years. And if the Raiders were to let go of Antonio Pierce, he being Mike Vrabel, is going to be on the Raiders' short list of candidates. So Mike Vrabel, keep in mind, his contract as a consultant already expired with the Cleveland Browns. So if the Raiders want to interview him, they could do so right away.
Yeah, and there was also reports over the course of the week and over the holiday that Vrabel wants the New England job if they move on from Jared Mayo, which I don't think they will. But who knows? I don't know what Kraft has up his sleeve either. But certainly there's going to be competition for any of these coaches. That's the other thing too, is it's not so much the money involved, Mo, but these coaches are going to look at opportunities. And you're right, relationships mean a lot. So the fact that Vrabel, and again, I've been on record as saying I rather have an offensive-minded coach, I think, for the Raiders, especially if they're going to try to develop a young quarterback now or in the future. But Vrabel also is a viable name, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty fascinating. I think you're going to start to see, especially during this weekend and after this weekend, Mo, those agents are working the phones, they're working the media, they plant these stories in the media, and they start to get their client talked about. Now, the coordinators, the Ben Johnsons of the world, that kind of thing, they're still in the playoffs. At least he's going to be. But then there's others who might not be. Your guy Liam Cohen. If the Buccaneers somehow, because they have not locked up their playoff spot yet, so if they don't get in, he's available quickly. So who knows, right? And the way the Raiders have done things in the past, and it is, well, we're going to set up a committee to look for a new head coach. Well, that hasn't worked so great for them. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad approach. It just hasn't worked for the Raiders. So if Tom Brady is going to make major decisions and be involved with it, my hope is they keep it small and they keep it quick.
I hope it's an extensive process, though, too, because we talked about this ad nauseum last year or at the beginning of this year, that the Raiders didn't do their due diligence when it came to their head coaching search. Two candidates going up against Antonio Pierce, two of which you didn't coach in 2023, is not an extensive head coaching process, search process. It's I don't want to call it. It was a sham of a process. Let's be honest. And if they're going to move on, they have to take that search way more serious in a division with potentially 3 playoff teams, 3 head coaches who have won 60% or more of their regular season games as coaches, college, pro. If the Raiders whiff on this one, Scott, and I've said this multiple times, if the Raiders whiff on their head coaching hire, they could be behind in this division for quite some time.
I would agree 100%. I think that's why it's so. And I think, listen, I understand the process of having a committee and having the team president, but those aren't football people. I think this gets down to you gotta go with football people who know football, who have the connections and the relationships to vet people, to look at people and see if they're a good fit. Because there's no culture with the Raiders, I would say. I mean, there's always a culture, but I think you need someone who's going to come in and do that. And so I just hope that they don't make it another farce, another circus, because you have 14 people who have to interview it. No, hey, Tom Brady, whoever, and Tom Telesco, talk to Mark Davis and say, listen, these are the 3 guys we think are the best candidates, and here's why. We want to go talk to them. Okay, great. So bring them in, have them meet the owner after they've met with the football people, and that's it. I don't understand why it has to be so difficult. I see a lot of other teams have done it, made good hires, and not gone through processes that seem very top heavy, but then result in subpar results, right? Like you said, in the sham of a search this past time. I mean, Leslie Frazier, good men and all that stuff, but still not guys you're going to have lead your team over time. So it'll be interesting. The drama will build as we go on. I'm sure we'll start to hear more, obviously, this weekend too, Mo, as the games unfold. So we'll see how it all run down and how, whether or not Antonio Pierce sticks around. Again, we'll find out depending on who the candidate is and depending if they just want to move on quickly or if they want to give him another chance and have him come back next year. So we'll see. It's all going to play out in the next few weeks, and we'll be here for it. And of course, we'll get more into the future once we start to get some of these pieces fall into place. But one thing we can start to do as well is get into the draft, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the next segment. We're going to talk also about Aidan O'Connell. We had some stories over the course of the week comparing Aidan O'Connell to C.J. Stroud, comparing Aidan O'Connell to other franchise-type quarterbacks. Is that real? I see a lot of you comment on that. It blows my mind, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We'll talk about it when we come back here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast, also heard on the radio, 101.5 FM, KDON in Las Vegas, 98.5 The Bet, and our video, also brought to you by good folks at BetUS. Don't get anywhere. Don't get anywhere. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Welcome back. Segment number 2 here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast, also heard on the radio, 101.5 FM, KDON in Las Vegas, as well as 98.5 The Bet. Hope you're doing well today. Happy New Year to you. Our first show of 2025. Unfortunately, 2025 started with tragedy in New Orleans. Our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody out in New Orleans impacted by the attack there. Just horrible ahead of the Sugar Bowl. Just terrible, terrible. And of course, in Las Vegas, too. We don't know all the details with Las Vegas. We do know a truck exploded at the Trump Hotel. So that hits close to home for Raiders fans and for our folks there in Las Vegas. So our best out to everybody there and be careful out there. All right, we're back. We're talking Raiders football. And Mo, I got to tell you, man, listen, I don't like to criticize other people's works, and I'm not necessarily criticizing the work, the premise. When you see, I saw a headline that said something to the effect that, Aidan O'Connell and C.J. Stroud, if you look at the numbers, you'd be surprised. Aidan O'Connell's better or just as good. And I think it's a good example of what we've been saying on this show, by the way, to make it clear. And jump in, Mo, if I'm wrong here. We've been saying Aidan O'Connell's a good quarterback, that he should be QB2. He could be your QB2 for a long time. He can come in. He can win games. He's improving in certain areas of his game. We've said that all along. But now what we're seeing, though, and maybe it's just a way to grab readership or grab social media interactions, whatever it is, when you start comparing, now, C.J. Stroud was Rookie of the Year last year. He struggled this year. But in the story and in the conversations I've seen around, for example, comparing him to C.J. Stroud, is this idea around numbers. And numbers do tell a story. There's no question. But numbers don't tell the full story.
Right. So there's a comparison between C.J. Stroud's numbers and Aidan O'Connell's numbers. And in certain categories, Aidan O'Connell, they played similar amount of games. I think Aidan O'Connell has played a few more games. So I think Aidan O'Connell, 19 games, C.J. Stroud, 16. So keep that in mind. The counting numbers, you have to be careful with counting numbers, especially when one player has played more games than the other. The other thing you have to take into account here with these numbers, as far as passing numbers are concerned between Aidan O'Connell and C.J. Stroud, is, number one, Aidan O'Connell, the schedule he's played, and C.J. Stroud, the schedule he's played. So people are going to say, well, C.J. Stroud doesn't look so special this year. Remember, the Houston Texans won their division last year, which means they're playing a first-place schedule, which means their schedule is going to be harder than the Raiders' schedule. So you can't really say, if you switch them and put Aidan O'Connell in the Houston Texans situation, that Aidan O'Connell will put up the same numbers, because you're playing different opponents. You're playing tougher opponents. You're playing other division winners and other top teams in the league. So you cannot just use the numbers and say, well, Aidan O'Connell's numbers would be the same if he were in Houston, because we don't know that. The other thing about this is, with numbers are concerned, is when the Raiders last year, we talked about them playing against bad teams, backup quarterbacks, so the competition is going to be watered down a bit. Remember, Aidan O'Connell had a big game against the Los Angeles Chargers last year, right? Raiders scored a franchise high 63 points. It was his best career, one of his best career games. Let's keep that into context, right? So playing a Chargers team last year with Easton Stick, a Chargers team that basically gave up on the head coach who was eventually fired. Aidan O'Connell
Yes.
put up big numbers. So some of these numbers are a bit skewed based on the competition. Now you play whoever it is on your schedule, but you have to give these passing numbers some context. Look at the opponents they played. Look at what was around them. Look what was going on this season. Now, again, CJ Stroud's having a down year, so the numbers are a lot closer now because of his down year. But after the first year, this comparison wouldn't even be made.
No.
Let's also keep in mind that CJ Stroud, you said, won Offensive Rookie of the Year, elevated his football team. So beyond the numbers, what does the quarterback do for the football team? Is he elevating the players around him? Is he elevating his team? CJ Stroud, with his numbers, elevated his team to the playoffs. Let's keep that in mind. And by the way, the Texans are not playing well, but they're still going to the playoffs.
He's still
So
in a quote unquote down year, has them in the playoffs.
right now, I get it's a bad division. The Rays are in a tougher division,
No
but
doubt.
again, no doubt. But let's also remember, scheduling is concerned. It's when you consider scheduling, the Texans are playing a first place schedule this season. I believe the Rays are playing a second place schedule, and we know over the past couple of games when Aidan O'Connell's played well, they are playing teams. They beat teams, Jaguars and Saints, with backup quarterbacks, bad teams. Their combined record of what, like 9-23. So I just want to put some context in mind when you look at those numbers.
Yeah, that's a great context. Very important too. I would also add to that again. It goes back to what I've been saying. I saw some people with the slander against Genty out of Boise because they got beat by Penn State handily. He still had 103 yards, even though they were putting 9 in the box almost every friggin' down. And it just goes back to people watching football. If you watch the Texans, even if you don't watch them, if you just keep up with the NFL overall, you would also know that CJ Stroud's been injured most of the year. Okay. And he's played through it. We saw Max Crosby do that, of course, until the last few weeks. So same kind of mentality of competitors. So you add in the tough schedule, you add in all this stuff. And look, Aidan O'Connell got hurt too. But the thing that I think is so dangerous, and I say this because the one thing we always try to do with people who listen to the show, Mo, as fans, as members of Raider Nation, is to always be upfront, honest with them. And they don't always have to agree with our opinions because they're just our opinions. But we never try to sell them false hope or, in this case, a false football messiah, because what it does to me is it it undermines the importance of the Raiders finding the franchise quarterback. Now, maybe they can't do it this year. And we'll talk about that. But to me, that's the point. So then you get a lot of people who are saying, oh, well, see, he's just as good. Look at his numbers. We don't need another quarterback. Not true. I think it's absolutely false. And if you talk to anybody around the league that is respectful or I should say is respected, the guys that you watch and listen to, all that kind of stuff, they all agree. They like Aidan O'Connell. They think he's developing. They think he can be a good quarterback, no question. But again, I think I'm not going to sell you unicorns and rainbows, as you coined the term, Mo, long time ago, just because I want to make you feel good. No, we're going to tell you what it thinks, and I just don't believe. Again, it's not negative. You've had people come at you with comments say, "Oh, why are you negative about?" We're not negative about Aidan O'Connell. It's just limitations. People have limitations, and he is what he is.
I think the counter argument is that if Aidan O'Connell had been drafted in the first or second round, that we would view him differently. It's because he's a fourth rounder that we're not willing to give him a chance beyond being a backup quarterback. But okay, so let's take that scenario. If Aidan O'Connell was a first or second round pick, I would expect him to have won the job outright this past offseason. If he were a first or second round pick, I would have questions because I'm saying, okay, it's your second year and you couldn't beat out Gardner Minshew, who couldn't complete 50% of his passes in the preseason. You expect a first or second round pick as a quarterback to be the guy by year two. If he's not the guy by year one, you're expecting him to come out there and win the job year two. And if he isn't winning the job in year two, you're asking questions. Think about that. So let's say CJ Stroud, where they picked him, and C.J. Stroud didn't win the job by year 2, you'd be asking, wow, he must really suck at practice, right? If a first or second round pick is not the starting quarterback by week 1 of his second year, you're like, man, he must be terrible.
Yeah.
So if you want to play that game and say Aidan O'Connell was the first or second round pick, we'd be looking at him differently. I wouldn't. I'd be saying, why isn't he the outright guy yet?
Right.
Same situation.
And he had and we talked about this in the preseason, Mo. He had the advantage. Remember, Aidan O'Connell helped Antonio Pierce get the job full time because when he played well at the end of the season and they won the game in Kansas City. Now he had a bad game that game, but overall he played well most of that part that he started because Pierce came in and made him the starter, right? As soon as he took over. So he had a vested interest. So he had the advantage. So the fact that he didn't win out the job against Minshew, it wasn't like Pierce didn't like O'Connell and was pining for Minshew. He got Minshew and he made the choice. So that's my point too, is that he couldn't beat out the veteran for the job, but yet you want to compare him to other quarterbacks in the league. And look, I'm okay with comparisons. And like you said, the numbers, you can look at numbers, but again, you have to look at what's behind the numbers. And yes, O'Connell's had different offensive coordinators, but there's also examples of other NFL quarterbacks who've had multiple offensive coordinators. Look at Baker Mayfield, right? He lost his offensive coordinator last year. Now Liam Cohen steps in, and what happens? Does even better. So you can say, and yeah, they're better offensive coordinators, that's for sure. But it's just interesting to me because what I don't want it to do is distract people from looking at that you always need to upgrade your positions no matter where they are and who you have. Now, you strike gold and you get one of these guys at quarterback, these guys that have, like, if you get Lamar Jackson, yeah, okay, you're not looking to improve the quarterback position every year. Clearly, you signed and you committed to a big deal. But to put it on that, I think, same stage and say, hey, he's just as good. No, you can't do that because I think it gives fans just a take that isn't based in reality because you're not giving them the full truth of what's behind those numbers.
Really quick, Scott, I think it's a bit of I think a lot of people fall victim to recency bias.
Yes.
Right. So you see this a lot with college prospects. When you're talking about evaluating, well, not evaluating, but ranking or comparing players. You brought up the Ashton Jeanty situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right when Boise State struggled as a team against Penn State, clearly not in the same class as Penn State. And I saw takes that people were saying, "Oh, Jeanty is just a guy. He's a jag on the pro level. He's not going to be very good. Look at him. He can't run on Penn State's defense." By the way, Scott, Penn State has a top 10 run defense across the nation. One of the best run defenses in college football. As you said, Jeanty still ran for over 100 yards. Oh, by the way, I think this is another problem we have with evaluating running backs in run games. The running back isn't the only part of the run game. Watch the Boise State offensive line get pushed back by the Penn State defensive line. Penn State won in the trenches there. Yeah, so it's a crime that Jeanty can't get these big chunk yard gains when his offensive line doesn't get a push. I think that's what 98% of running backs in the league. If their offensive line can't create holes, what are they doing? Now there's still some plays where he created something out of nothing, but I think we fall victim to the last thing we saw is our sweeping evaluation of a player, and we forget about the complete body of work. So to take it back to the C.J. Stroud, Aidan O'Connell situation, are we forgetting that C.J. Stroud uplifted his team from nothing to something last year? Won Offensive Rookie of the Year, had a bunch of game-winning drives. He was what Jayden Daniels is this year. We were talking the same way about C.J. Stroud last year. Oh, man, the Texans are down by 5. They need a touchdown. And C.J. Stroud brought them down the field, and he got them the win. Yeah. Now, again, he's not playing well this year. I don't give excuses. We can talk about injuries. We can talk about whatever. But his team is still going to the playoffs with a first-place schedule. And if you can't tell me that if you put Davis Mills back there, who was the backup for the Texans, that they would have the same record.
Agreed. And I even had somebody tell me, before we go to the break, we're just having a friendly conversation, and somebody tell me online that, well, I just agree with you guys that the quarterback's the number one priority because look at the Bengals. Look what Joe Burrow's doing, and they're not going to the playoffs. And I'm like, What? Like, again, understand what's happening in Cincinnati. The Bengals are putting up 30-plus points almost every game, and they lose because of defense. But I reminded this gentleman, I said, remember, they won an ASA championship, and they went to another one. That's 2 times in the last 4 years.
They went to the Super Bowl.
So, yeah, it matters. But anyway, and I think, again, as we've said continuously on the show, Aidan O'Connell should be a Raider for a long time, and I think he's the guy that you can trust to be that guy in the backup position. And he may end up starting next year. We're going to get into that as we move along in the next few weeks, depending on what they do. But let's be realistic when we compare them to other talents around the league based on your point, Mo, which is you can't look at it just from recency. You can't just look at it from specific numbers because, yes, C.J. Stroud's fallen back this year for a lot of different reasons, and you can't just wish that away and say, well, forget about what he did before. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about this as well. All right, we're going to take our final break, and then we're going to get right to your calls here on Silver and Black today. Got a bunch of them today. Want to get to those and see how you're feeling before we head into the final week of the season here on Silver and Black today. An Odyssey Sports Original Podcast, heard on the radio, 101.5 FM, KDON in Las Vegas, and 98.5 The Bet as well. And don't forget, our good friends at BetUS bring you the video where you can get 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 just using the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. Scott, Mo, coming back right after this.
Enough of hearing us talk about the Raiders. It's time to hear from you.
Any Oakland Raider fan, Las Vegas Raider fan, stand up.
On this edition of the Raider Nation Mailbag.
That black hole rocking and rolling.
Don't be a wallflower. Be a part of the show. Leave your question or message by calling 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Or drop us an email at mail@silverandblacktoday.com.
All right, we roll into the home stretch here on the final segment of Silver and Black today. Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe. If you're listening to us on the radio on Sunday, thank you. But make sure you subscribe. Get the rest of the shows. Wherever you get your audio, you can find Silver and Black today, including the free Odyssey app. I mean, it's there. It's in Spotify. It's in Apple. Wherever you want to get it, you can find it as well. Make sure you rate and review. We appreciate that very much. Also, video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS, where you can get 150% sign-up bonus. Just use the promo code YouTube150. Mo Moten, Scott Branson back with you. We're going to get to these calls, Mo. I think we're going to have a mixed bag today. I think people are starting to look towards the future more, which is great because that's where the show's going to go to. But, you know, I think people just still have a lot to say. They're disappointed, but they also I think there's some excitement on what's going to happen next.
Right. Scott, really quick, though, not to go back to segment 2, but I looked at the C.J. Stroud to Aidan O'Connell side-by-side comparison again. And this is why I say be careful with numbers. So the graphic compares C.J. Stroud's year this year to Aidan O'Connell's 2 years. So again, you're manipulating the stats to prove a point.
By using
you're
number
forgetting
of games,
right? You're forgetting about C.J. Stroud's entire rookie year. You're throwing out the entire rookie year and just comparing his bad year to Aidan O'Connell's 2 years. Be careful with numbers out there. But anyway, like you said, Raider Nation is ready for the offseason. I'm ready for the offseason. I know that you shouldn't say that as a co-host of a show, but I'm ready for the offseason. Oh, yeah. I'm ready to turn the page on this season, regardless of the Raiders win or lose on Sunday against the Chargers. The magic is going to happen. Well, not the magic. The frenzy is going to happen starting Black Monday. Are they going to fire Antonio Pierce? Then you move on to, okay, we're going to know their draft pick. Who are going to be their options at wherever they pick? What are they going to do about the quarterback situation? If they fire Pierce, who comes in to replace him? Then you have to think about offensive and defensive coordinator, because as I pointed out last show, Patrick Graham declined an extension with the Raiders, so he's going to be a free agent regardless of what happens to Pierce. So, and we talked about Scott Turner possibly joining Bill Belichick's staff. So even if Pierce stays, we're going to be talking about hires for the coordinator position as well.
Yeah, it might be a completely new staff. I mean, there might be some holdovers, but I just think that if that happens, because I think Patrick Graham's gone. I think he's going to get out because he understands that even if Pierce is retained, he's going to be on a very short leash, and there's not much job security there. So I think that's the other problem with, unless you give Pierce an extension, a public extension saying, hey, we're giving you a 3-year extension, which I couldn't believe. But if that's the only way to do that, because then how are you going to go hire all these people? Oh, if he just gets a good offensive coordinator. Well, a good offensive coordinator is not going to come if he thinks he can get fired 7 games into the 2025 season.
That's a good point.
Right? So that's why you're either going to commit to him long term or you got to switch. So we'll see how it goes. All right. We're going to get out to Chavi. Chavi up in the Bay Area. Here he is.
Scott Moe. This is Chavi from the Bay Area. Calling again. Just want to say, great show. Make this real quick. Just because we won 2 games in a row doesn't mean we should keep AP. Again, we beat 2 backups, 2 bad teams. A win's a win, but this happened last year, right? All the backups teams that we won, and we thought AP was the coach, which I was on board with AP last year, but again, I saw enough throughout the whole season that these 2 wins won't do it for me. I just feel like we got to move on, and I know there's people talking about tanking and draft. I think before we even talk about the draft and quarterbacks, which we definitely need, we need to find the right coach, an offensive coordinator, and I'm going to stick by that. But we'll see how the draft, and like I said, I'm ready for the season to be over. I didn't even really watch the game. I just saw the score. I saw parts of it, but ready to move on for the offseason. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for everything you do, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Chavi. We appreciate it, man. We appreciate you listening and your support as always, and your call in. Mo, this is an interesting point, though, because, you look at last year, Antonio Pierce got the full-time job because of player pressure and I think public sentiment. So clearly Mark Davis can be swayed, and he has in the past, by public sentiment. To Chavi's point that these 2 wins are nothing special to write home about, an NFL win is an NFL win. Let's make that clear. But he brings up that good point, and you can't put too much of the recency bias, like you talked about in the last segment about Aidan O'Connell, into that. But is this why you think that if he were to beat the Chargers starters, that the support and the idea in the public that, well, look, he was showing this improvement. You asked for improvement, he showed improvement. Do you think that will play into the mind of Mark Davis? And that's why you sort of think that?
Yeah, my point has been that I would move on from Pierce for multiple reasons. But I can see Mark Davis having, if he was going to get rid of Pierce, having a change of heart if the Raiders win this game against the Chargers coming up, especially if it's against the Chargers starters and they win handily. Let's remember, as you said, Mark Davis listened to his players when it came to hiring Pierce full-time in the first place. Mark Davis, while you don't want ownership listening to fans, really, though the Raider fans have been more right than Mark Davis, I feel like, in the last decade or so. But you want your ownership and your front office to make decisions based on football minds that they have around them. You don't want your owner going outside and putting his finger in the air and taking the temperature of the fan base and then making his decisions. That's how you wind up making bad decisions. Right. Let's be honest, right? So the win, while it won't move people like Chavi and you and I and a lot of Raider fans out there, let's remember who's making the decisions here. I know Tom Brady's involved, but Mark Davis has to make the final call. And if the Raiders finish the season with a 3-game winning streak and cap it off with a win over a playoff caliber team that is trying to win for seeding, I think that's going to factor into Mark Davis's decision.
There you go. And like I said, he is swayed by obviously player opinions and public opinions. So we'll see. All right, Chavi, great call. Now we're going out to Raider Rob in San Diego. Here's Raider Rob.
Yeah.
We have a Jacob impression.
What's up,
Raider
guys?
Rob.
This is Raider Rob from San Diego. I'm Jacob's cousin. So, first off, I'm not Jacob's cousin. I don't know him, but shout out. Nice greeting. Let's talk about what needs to be talked about. The quarterback position, people. We've won a couple of games. Cam or Shador might not be in our pick unless we sacrifice and move up. So this is what I propose, and I would love to hear what you guys think. Let's trade away AOC to Detroit. AOC has proven that he is a quality backup. And let's get that boy Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, looking like he's about to win the Heisman till he tore his ACL. Let's get him over to the Raiders. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Let's throw in a third-round pick from Devontae. Let's do it, huh? What do you guys think about that? I would love to hear what you got to say. Love the show. Mo, you the man. Scott, you the man. And Murph, shout out for the fan. You the man, too. Raider Rob to the Raiders.
All right, there's Raider Rob doing his Jacob at the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a little extra there. So, Rob, thanks for the call, man. It's interesting, Mo. I think you see it a lot, too. I see a lot of Raider fans continually bring up Hendon Hooker. I just don't see, even with the deal that they gave Goff, I don't see them trading the quarterback they have of the future there.
I don't see them swapping Hooker for Aidan O'Connell.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the right price, I think they would move him because every player has a price, right? And I don't think a backup quarterback is immune to that. But if you're the Lions, why would you trade Hendon Hooker for Aidan O'Connell?
Right.
If you really believed in Hendon Hooker, and I believe they drafted him in the 3rd round, Aidan O'Connell was a 4th round pick, so it was in the same realm, similar draft spots. But if you're the Lions, why would you trade for Aidan O'Connell? Why would you want Aidan O'Connell? Yeah. And I think the question there is, has Aidan O'Connell's performances as of late, is that enough to generate trade interest from other teams? And I'm not saying Raider Rob does this, but I see this too. A lot of fans overvalue players on their roster. They think a player has a certain value. They think they can get something for that player. And in real NFL circles, that player ain't worth close to what some fans think he's worth. Now, Raider Rob says quarterback, and you're throwing a 3rd round pick. So I understand Raider Rob's trade proposal. It's fair, in my opinion. He's not overvaluing Aidan O'Connell because he's throwing in that draft pick to sweeten the deal. So I understand Raider Rob's trade proposal. But if I'm Holmes, the GM of the Lions, I'm saying we believe in Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
And while we do love the draft pick, we'd be interested in the draft pick. Why are we swapping? Why are we swapping this other than to get that 3rd round draft pick? Now, if I consider it, but if I'm the Lions and I really believe in Hooker, Aidan O'Connell isn't swaying me, especially if you want a quarterback with mobility. So Hendon Hooker has the mobility factor. He has better physical tools than Aidan O'Connell. Even though Aidan O'Connell is more experienced, has the playing experience, he's got a bit of a resume. Hendon Hooker doesn't. But if I'm looking at upside, I'm still holding on to Hendon.
Right, and remember, Hendon Hooker, as he mentioned early on before his injury, was in the Heisman hunt, so to speak. Who knows if he would have been at the top of it or not? We don't know.
Yes, they help.
But he was going to be a 1st round draft pick. There wasn't a time when Aidan O'Connell was a Heisman candidate or when he was going to be a 1st round draft pick. That's just not. It wouldn't happen. Now, maybe if Aidan O'Connell had done a little better, although he did great at Purdue, maybe he improved his stock. But again, that goes back to scouting and a lot of other things there too. So I agree with you, Mo, on that one. All right. Appreciate the call, Raider Rob.
Raider Rob.
I'm sure Jacob will appreciate the
Jacob impersonation.
The opening. I love it. All right. Here is, we go out to our good buddy, NorCal Raider.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Mo. How's it going? NorCal Raiders just checking in. The tough season this year. I really want to call more and just emphasize on the offseason. I'm hoping that we make the change. And honestly, there's a guy out there that I really would like to talk to. I like Agent McCarthy from, I think it's Agent McCarthy, one of those. The guy that's with the Cowboys. I think he'd be a good coach because he talks to the quarterback, and he'd also be a good fit for. You don't have to. If we lose our coordinators, we don't have to worry about. He's the guy that basically runs the offense. You've seen what he's doing with Cooper Rush right now. He's looking pretty good. On the defense, more likely we're going to have to probably change the scheme and get a new defensive coordinator because it's been like 3 years and just the the open coverages and stuff like that. There's a lot of work to be done on that. Um, I think we're going to be trade partners more likely with New England coming up in the offseason because they're not in need for a quarterback. So I think we can probably pick up a quarterback and pick up a veteran. You know, even like an Aaron Rodgers or something like that, just for a year, just for I don't want to put the guy in right away. I think if we get him and we sit him for a year, I think that'd be a great helpful to him. But yeah, we have a lot of work. If we really want to shake things up. I don't want to trade anybody away, but I mean Max Crosby, if it's going to be a 2-year deal, like him sitting there and he's just wasting his time years, I would ship him out. That's me. I don't know. Maybe some people feel like it's a popular thing, but there's no reason to hold on to him just for us to say that we have him on our team. We're not doing this with him. So that's all I got. Maybe want to hear your thoughts. Yeah, that's all I really got. Thanks.
All right, NorCal Raider. There you go. A bunch of different stuff there. I'm going to focus in on 2 things. Mike McCarthy. Listen, he's had these great regular seasons and then can't win in the playoffs. Whether or not he sticks around in Dallas, I have no idea what Jerry Jones is going to do. Secondarily, I think he mentioned some quarterbacks there. Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I wouldn't even get close to that. You saw what happened in New York this year. You saw Devontae Adams go there from the Raiders, and they're going to release both of them. It sounds like, right, Mo? So a mess there. It's not an easy thing. Trading up with the Patriots, absolutely. But the Raiders are going to get in line on that one because there's going to be a bunch of people. If you really like a player, and it might not be the quarterbacks. By the way, the quarterbacks could slip a little bit. People aren't considering that. They could slip a little bit. So if you really like one of those quarterbacks, I'm not saying you have to, but Mo, one of those quarterbacks or both of them could slide to 3, 4, 5, somewhere around there, and then you're starting to think about trading into different positions or whatever. I mean, we just don't know with the draft, which is why it's so exciting.
So I'll address your quarterback theory there. I think it's possible that the quarterbacks could slip, depending on how the order ends up. So right now, the Patriots are in the number 1 spot. They don't need a quarterback.
Right.
Now, the buzz around, I guess, social media and even some draft analysts is that this draft isn't the draft you want to trade up for a quarterback. Mm-hmm. So what if the Patriots and the Jaguars are at the top of the order, and NFL GMs agree and feel like this isn't the draft to trade up? Then you could be looking at non-quarterbacks going 1 or 2 or 1 and 3, whatever the case may be. There could be one quarterback that falls to maybe 4 or 5. Who knows? We don't know what the order's going to look like yet. We'll get to that next week when the order is set for the non-playoff teams, right? I want to get to his comment about Mike McCarthy. The first thing about Mike McCarthy is, yes, his future is uncertain in Dallas. I didn't like his defensive coordinator hire from the beginning. He hired Mike Zimmer, who I think is an older coach. Not to say I'm not ageist on the show, but when you've been out of the league at Mike Zimmer's age, I think there's going to be a drop off from what they had with Dan Quinn, who brings a lot more energy to his units, and you're seeing that in Washington. So if you're hiring Mike McCarthy, you just understand I'd be a little concerned about the defensive coordinator hires. The Packers, when Mike McCarthy was there, had issues with their defense. Didn't have the best defense with Mike McCarthy there. So if you're losing Patrick Graham because his contract is expiring, I'd be worried about the defensive coordinator hire under Mike McCarthy. The other thing I want to get to, Aaron Rodgers. And I want to get to this because our buddy Murph brought up a dream scenario, and I put that in air quotes, dream scenario.
Or a nightmare.
Or nightmare, depending on how you look at it, with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams come to Las Vegas as a package deal. So there'll be the return of Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers coming to Las Vegas. And I had some fun with it. Of course, some people took it way too seriously. But I chalked it up to Murph is having a rough year. It was New Year's Eve, I believe, when he made that post. So there might have been a little adult beverages involved there. I don't want to put that on Murph if that's not the case. But I'm just saying that
maybe.
In all seriousness, though, Aaron Rodgers as a starter with his football teams over the last 3 years, because we're not going to count the year he blew out his Achilles, 2023, 12-21 as a starter with his teams. That's his last year with the Packers, and it's his first full year with the Jets this year. 12-21 as a starter. Now, I know wins and losses aren't a quarterback stat, but has he been able to uplift? You've been watching those teams, and he's been in my backyard here in New York, New Jersey. He has not uplifted the squad around him, and there's just way too much drama for a 41-year-old quarterback who is, by the way, unsure if he's going to even play in 2025. I wouldn't touch Aaron Rodgers. He just comes with way too much noise. I think the Raiders need to avoid drama, and he brings it wherever the last few years, whether he's subtly throwing his head coach under the bus or he's on the Pat McAfee show. There's just too much noise. I wouldn't want to bring the Aaron Rodgers circus to Las Vegas. That's just me.
100%. And listen, with the quarterback situation, if they have a veteran start next year, it's going to be Aidan O'Connell. There's nobody else out. And stop with the Sam Darnold. He's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. So you start looking at Jacoby Brissett's and those type of. Look, what are you going to do? Now, you might end up signing one of those guys as a backup too, if to come in if you give Aidan O'Connell the job because you can't get a quarterback otherwise. I would hope that they get a rookie at some point in the draft and just see if they can strike gold on that. But yeah, I just don't see. I mean, the Aaron Rodgers circus, it's just done, and I think he retires. I really do think he's going to retire. So we'll see. But as always, NorCal Raider, appreciate the call, man. Now we go from Northern California all the way to South Florida. NorCal Raider to South Florida Raider. Here we go.
Hey, this is South Florida Raider down from Miami. Wishing you a happy New Year, guys. It's been a long season. I've watched all the games this season. I've even attended one. There are a lot of positives in what has been an awful year, I think. The Raiders hit on their first 3-round picks. When was the last time that happened? I think that's a big step in the right direction for this organization. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to draft a quarterback this year, but if they can't, if somehow they can get the running back from Boise State, I think that would be a really good pick for them. I also think getting the right coach in the building is the next best thing the Raiders can do this offseason. I think a name to watch out for is probably Bruce Arians, now that Tom Brady is also part of the Raider organization. I also have a question for Mo. If you combine last year's quarterback class with this year's class, based on college performances, where does Sanders and Ward rank? I look forward to listening to the show, man. You guys have a happy New Year, bro. Later.
South Florida Raider. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Mo, I'll let you start with his question there at the end about where Sanders and Ward would be in last year's quarterback draft.
If I were to, now this is offhand, I'm not, again, this is not a hardcore answer. But just off the top of my head, they would definitely be behind. As far as college performances, we're not counting the NFL. So we're not looking at what they did in the league this year. Coming out of college, he would be behind Caleb Williams, clearly, and Jaden Daniels. And I think I would put him also behind Drake May because I like what I saw to Drake May when he was at North Carolina. So I think they would be, at best, 4 and 5.
Yeah.
I would probably still put them ahead of Bo Nix coming out of college, though I liked Bo Nix's experience. A lot of people listening to the show know we did a complete episode where I was trying to sell Raider Nation on Bo Nix. I don't know if you remember that, Scott. I was trying to say Bo Nix would be a great fit for the Raiders. I'm not running a victory lap here, but I'm just saying that I saw some things in Bo Nix that felt like he could be successful, and I loved his experience. Cam Ward has extensive experience in the FBS level. Oh, he has extensive experience, period, because it goes back to his time at Incarnate Word. A lot of people aren't familiar with that. A lot of people kind of came onto Cam Ward this year, as he was putting up big numbers. But if you remember, Scott, last year, before he declared that he was going to go back to Miami, go back to school and play in Miami,
that was your guy.
I was on the Cam Ward train there. So I will say that to South Florida Raiders question, I would probably have them at best 4 or 5. Again, we're not counting what they did in the NFL this year, because I know a lot of people say Caleb Williams sucks. I don't think Caleb Williams sucks, by the way.
No,
I think people are giving up a little too early on him. But based on college experience, I would say that 4 or 5 is where I would have them. Now, if you want to make the debate that that if you like Bo Nix, and I did like him a bit, that Bo Nix would be ahead of those guys, I would push back a little bit on that one. But 4 or 5, and they'd probably, but I still think both of them would have a chance to go in the first round of this year's draft, or last year's draft. So while people are saying that this class isn't strong and it's kind of knocking Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders down a bit, I still do think that both players would have went in the first round last year.
Yeah, and Michael Penix is in that mix too, and I think your doppelganger, of course. And again, like those guys, and he's one of those guys. You talked about your recency thing, right? Where it's like they get knocked out in the championship game. He doesn't play particularly well, and suddenly everybody thought he was going to be a top 5 pick, and then of course he went a little later. The Falcons. But still, there were a lot of people like, oh, now he's going to be second rounder. After that performance, it's like, well, that was one performance. Now, he had his age issues, the injury issues, all that. But I think, too, with these quarterbacks, it's very easy to say, well, they're not great, and it's not a great class. And it's true overall when you look at it. But if you put them in last year's class, they're right there. And I think Shedeur Sanders in particular is that guy. And I think that all of the things that come with Shedeur Sanders, I understand some people don't like the brashness and all that, but I think that changes at the pro level, and I think he's going to be very successful. Whether or not the Raiders are interested in him, we don't know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting as it rolls on.
So basically, it would have been a tier 1 of Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, and then I guess a tier 1B or tier 2 of Penix, Ward, Sanders. And then you're talking about
Nix.
Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy after that.
Yeah, agreed. Well put. South Florida Raider, thank you, man. All right, now we go to the real Jacob. Not somebody impersonating Jacob, but Jacob from Fresno.
Yep. Jacob from Fresno. What's up, guys? Yeah, I kind of messed it up there at the end, but it works, right? That'll be the new way. How about that? Well, listen, guys, this is kind of a bittersweet because I don't know if I'm going to keep calling the show as much as I used to. Things have happened in my life that have changed the trajectory of where I'm going. All for the good. But I got to tell you, part of the place where I worked, the good thing was I could always be on the phone, and there was nothing wrong with it. My supervisors were 100% cool with that kind of thing. It's not going to happen anymore. But I got to say, I am in Las Vegas, and because of the new trajectory of my path, I cannot go to the Raiders game upcoming this Sunday. And I was very, very close to doing it. But, hey, I at least got to see Allegiant Stadium for the first time. Fantastic. Great building. Good job, Mark Davis. You did it, and we're here. And I got to tell you guys, I'm so happy for the future. I'm so excited. AP is the greatest coach in the world out here. You see what happened with this roster? You went 2 in a row. The greatest. Hall of Fame. Tom McCollin. Right? I know you guys 100% agree with that take. Especially after listening to you guys all year. Yeah, no. We are on 2 different sides, clearly. I love AP. I hope he's back next year. I just don't think that he had enough, particularly in the quarterback. Paul and we agree, right, that Aidan O'Connell is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Apparently AP doesn't agree, but, hey, I think he has to say that, because you can't put doubt on your guy, especially at the end of the season. We're not going to switch a quarterback, right? You can't say that. You can't put doubt in the guy.
Yep.
But listen, guys, I'm running out of time. And I've said nothing thus far, except I think that AP needs to be back. And I know, have a field day with me. Go ahead. Tear it apart. I just love him. I think he's a Raider. I think he's going to get the Raiders over the hump eventually. We just need to get him a quarterback. We need to get that quarterback an offensive line. That's why I think Aiden's the start next year. I'm going to run out of time. I love you guys. Merry New Year. God bless you. Take it easy and go Raiders.
There you go. Jacob in Fresno driving through Las Vegas somewhere. First of all, congratulations on the new gig, which I'm sounds like you got. So that's awesome, my man. And I know, get ready for Valentine's Day. Send AP some Valentines since you're enamored. Yeah, you might want to send him like a candygram or something like that. But no, I like his positivity, Mo. Like, it's been a tough year, but you wake up every day and you have two ways you can go about the day, and that is you can look at all the bad things and think about how bad things are, or you can look at the positives and say, hey, can it get worse? Well, maybe it could get worse, but the chances are it can get a lot better. And so I like Jacob's attitude there about, hey, we're in Vegas, we got this, and we got to move forward. In the quarterback situation, eventually it'll take care of itself, hopefully. But there's nothing wrong with being optimistic, even after the crappy year they had this season.
So the supervisor Jacob, or general manager Jacob, or whatever Jacob's new title is, whatever he's got going on over there. Congrats, by the way, Jacob. Yeah. I'm not going to tear down Jacob's comment, though. No, I know he's expecting us to rail on him because we know he loves AP, and he knows where we stand on AP right now. But I will say this. He brings up a good point here. He brought the comment about AP saying that Aidan O'Connell is a star in this league, and I want to get into that because I think there could be something there. This is my theory. What if AP has some confidence that he's going to be back, and he's preparing us all for Aidan O'Connell to be the starter in week 1 of 2025? So I don't think maybe I'm looking too far into this, but just the theory, what if he's like, I could be back next year. Aidan O'Connell is under contract. We're out of range for a top quarterback prospect. It may be difficult to trade for a veteran or get a veteran that we like. I may be back with Aidan O'Connell. I should pump him up now to prepare people for the reality that I could be back along with Aidan O'Connell as the starting quarterback in week 1 of 2025. Now, a lot of Raider fans listening to us are going to cringe at that and probably click off the show hearing that potential reality, but it is a possibility. As I've said, I really do think Mark Davis is going to weigh this last game heavily if the Raiders were to win against the Chargers starters. As I said, the Raiders' path to finding that franchise quarterback is very blurry right now, and Aidan O'Connell is going to be under contract. So there's a possibility where Raiders are starting the season, AP is still there, and Aidan O'Connell finally wins the job outright in the offseason, and he's your week 1 starter. So I don't think AP throwing out that statement is just a benign statement.
No, and I agree with you, Mo, but like I said earlier, if Pierce comes back, you have to give him a multi-year deal. And so based on what he's done, and again, I think it could happen, but I'm saying you have to give him a multi-year deal because you're not going to get any top-line offensive or defensive coordinator to come into a coach that's on a prove-it deal 1 year. Now, he could get fired anyway, even with a 3-year deal, but that just costs the Raiders more money. So we'll see. But Mark Davis, we'll see how the decisions are made. I think maybe the first big announcement will be what the hell Tom Brady's going to be doing. I think that's one of the announcements I'm waiting for to understand because we're all speculating and speculating on speculating. So we'll see how it goes. And by the way, I don't know that Antonio Pierce is a great evaluator of quarterbacks. But that's just me.
The question with Tom Brady is, we don't know what his vision is for the Raiders, right? We don't know. We have no clue how good Tom Brady is at evaluating talent or coaches. Right. But we do know, because Mark Davis has said it multiple times now, that Tom Brady is going to be involved in these decisions. So I had a commenter in my Bleacher Report Live that said, why are we glorifying, not we, but why are people glorifying Tom Brady as this great evaluator? And we're not. We're just saying that we understand that he's going to have a strong voice and a lot of what goes on during the Raiders offseason.
Well, and I'll get into it in another show because I really want to explore something that popped into my head yesterday on New Year's Day. And that was, what is Mark Davis's succession plan for when he kicks the bucket? Where does the team go? They have no family left, right? There's no kids. He's the managing owner. So it's not hard to think about that maybe that is his succession plan. His succession plan is Tom Brady becoming the controlling owner at some point, right? And I hope Mark Davis lives a very long and healthy life. So I'm not doing that, but we'll talk about that as we go into the offseason too, because I think it's important. All right, thanks for the call, man. Now we go out to Raider is easy. Easy. We have Raider Izzy. He did not call in. It's Raider Easy.
Oh, Raider Easy. Okay.
Or maybe it isn't. Well, maybe it is Raider Easy. Maybe I'm just fooling you. Here we go.
What up, Scott and Mo? Raider Easy from the Bay.
It's Raider Izzy.
Happy New Year's Eve, gentlemen. Take the break from chopping up garlic as I'm whipping up this Viet Cajun crab cookout I'm having for New Year's. I wonder what you guys are up to.
Chefing it up.
Anyway, fellas, how about our boy Aidan O'Connell getting his weight up, notching a couple slump busters on his bedpost, getting a little more confidence. We'll see if he and his wingman, Mr. AP, can go out and take down a more promising young piece like, I don't know, Harbaugh and the Chargers next week. And then maybe we have something to talk about, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But all this brings me back to one topic, which is what I'm calling about today, and it's standards. Yes, standards. Because I think you guys have alluded to this many, many times, but fans, Raider Nation, we tend to lower our standards. We tend to lower the bar with our expectations about what the team should be and what we should expect and what kind of quarterback we should have and so on and so forth. And you know what? That's our right to do it because we really have no choice. I mean, after suffering through so much disappointment and misery and having absolutely no control over the situation, that's all we can really do. We got to manage our expectations. So that's expected. But for the Raiders, for an NFL franchise, a storied one at that, with such great history, it is absolutely unacceptable to lower the standard whatsoever because this team was built on what? Commitment to excellence. The motto is not, just do good enough to keep people buying tickets, baby. It's just win, baby. And to do that, you have to have that commitment to excellence. So with that in mind, I think it's really, really important that the team applies that same exact point of view to the entire roster, top to bottom, players and coaches included. And when you look at it like that, a quarterback like Aidan O'Connell he ain't going to do it. I think we all know that, and maybe he can be a backup, and that's okay. But I think you need to apply that same logic all up and down the roster, including our boy, Mr. Tom Telesco. And when you look at the job he did with quarterback this year, that is completely unacceptable. Nice job in the draft. A few hits in free agency. I like it. But now that we're coming into next year and maybe AP's the fall guy, well, guess who the pressure's going to be on to make things happen at quarterback? Yeah, that's right. Our boy, Mr. Teflon Tom. Now, I think to wrap this up, what I will say is no matter what happens, there's no savior, there's no Messiah. There's no magic quarterback that's going to come and save the situation because, honestly, that's what bad teams do. They go looking for Jesus. And he's not available at quarterback.
There you go, Raider Izzy ran out of time, but really good call. Funny stuff there, too. And he's right. We talk about standards and we talk about looking at players and look, fans are fans. They want their team to be good. Some are more into it and into the football side of it. Some are just fans. They just watch the games. They like the players, and that's totally fine. But, Mo, that whole idea, and I think that's the Tom Brady thing. We don't know if Tom Brady's going to be good at it. We don't. So that's a good point. But we do know that he's not a loser. He's somebody who wins. He has a reputation. He has a brand himself to protect. So he has a vested interest in the Raiders doing
well. If anyone has high standards, we know that Tom Brady, as the honk is behind me, we know Tom Brady has high standards. We know Tom Brady isn't lowering the bar for anyone. So at least we could see that. We don't know how good of an evaluator of talent and coaches he is. But we know Tom Brady is not a fan of mediocrity. And that's where the Raiders have been for how long now, right? So that's a start. Also, I want to just say that we're not anti-Aidan O'Connell. I think we're mischaracterized sometimes as anti-Aidan O'Connell hosts. And it goes back to what Raider Izzy is saying. It's not that we don't like Aidan O'Connell. This is not an Aidan O'Connell hate session. We're just looking for better. We're looking for more. We're looking for the upgrade. And it goes back to just standards. In this league, I think now Aidan O'Connell has made some great moves in the pocket. He has shown that he's got some mobility in there. He does. But if there's an upgrade available, You find that upgrade, and you don't just hand the job to Aidan O'Connell. At the very least, he's earned, again, a spot to compete for the starting job next year because he's going to be around. Regardless of who's on the roster, unless it's a proven guy who's, been to the playoffs and won playoff games or, just an established quarterback, Aidan O'Connell is going to be able to compete for the job. Now, it's another story. Can he win the job over whoever his competition is? And you would hope that the Raiders bring in a quarterback that it's an upgrade in that quarterback room. And you would assume that, okay, at the very least, Aidan O'Connell can compete, but if you bring in an established veteran in there, he's probably not going to win that job, and whoever they bring in is probably going to start week one. Now, if it's a rookie coming in, Aidan O'Connell will have a shot to start week one because that rookie may not be available, may not be ready to play week one. Yeah. Unless you're drafting Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, I don't think you're expecting that rookie to come in and start week one, especially if you're drafting in round 2 or round 3. Aidan O'Connell has a shot. And that goes back to my point that AP may be getting us ready for Aidan O'Connell being a starter if he's back. But to wrap it up, as Raider Izzy did, there is no quarterback Jesus. As you said, Scott, I think Sam Darnold is going to stay in Minnesota because a lot of Raider fans want to see Sam Darnold. I think Minnesota at least franchise tags him so that because they're going to the playoffs, obviously, and they could be the number 1 seed and division winner. No way you let that guy out of the building after that type of season. And the options after that, again, you're looking at Aaron Rodgers. I'd stay away. You're looking at Kirk Cousins. I would stay away. There's really quick, Scott. There's one veteran option that could be available. I just want to just put this out there, right? Tom Telesco, as a GM of the Chargers, signed Geno Smith in 2017-2018. Geno Smith was the backup to Phillip Rivers. Geno Smith does not have guaranteed money on his contract after this year. He is going to want a new deal. Now, he's going through his worst year in Seattle. I don't think it's a far-fetched thought that Seattle may not want to give Geno Smith what he wants. And if Geno Smith then doesn't get what he wants, maybe he wants out of Seattle. Maybe Seattle's willing to move on. I could see Tom Telesco sniffing around on Geno Smith. I'm not saying that's the greatest quarterback plan. No. I'm just saying don't be surprised if Geno Smith, right. Don't be surprised if Geno Smith does become available. Don't be surprised if he's connected to Tom Telesco again and the Raiders.
Oh, that'll start a fire. Nice one. Well, statistically, Geno Smith's just as good as Josh Allen. I'm just kidding. All right. That closed out the show. Thank you guys for all your calls. We appreciate it. If you want to call in for next show, we sometimes get too many calls. We can't get all to them at once, but 702-900-7869, 702-900-7869. You can also text us at the number. Email is mail@silverandblacktoday.com. All right. That's going to do it for the show. Mo, before we go, let everybody know what you got going on the remainder of this first week in the year 2025.
So, Bleacher Report live on Sunday, the final game of the season. Thank goodness we've all made it. It's been a nightmare of a year, as a lot of callers have said. We'll wrap it up. We'll know the Raiders draft pick in the order for 2025, for the 2025 draft. We might have a leaning of, what the Raiders are going to do at the head coaching position. If the Raiders get beat badly, I would assume that Antonio Pierce could be fired on Black Monday. We'll see. And then I'll be moving to the primetime slot for Bleacher Report Live starting next week, Monday through Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. By that time, the first primetime show, we may know what the Raiders are going to do at the head coaching position. I assume that's going to be the topic Monday night. Please join me over at Bleacher Report Live. Just pull the Bleacher Report app. I'll be there.
All right, there you go. Make sure you catch that. And we also make sure you follow Mo on X at Momoton, Moemoton. Okay, that's it for this edition of Silver and Black Today. Of course, Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And a thanks to our audience in Las Vegas on 101.5 KDON and 98.5 The Bet. We appreciate you guys being with us. And a fast, quick reminder at the end here, our video brought to you by the good folks at BetUS, where you can get 150% sign-up bonus. That's right, 150% using the promo code YouTube150, YouTube150 promo code. There we go. And it's up to $2,000, by the way, on that deposit. So go do that. We love it. We love them there. They've done great stuff with us this year. We're really excited about the future with BetUS, and I'm sure you will be too as well. All right, for our producer on the radio in Las Vegas, Mark Bonilla, for our producer at Odyssey, Mr. Mike Robier. And from Omoten, I'm Scott Branson. We will see you guys after the game on Sunday, myself and Murph, for the post-game show. Take care, everybody, and happy 2025. Bye-bye. All right.